Hello everybody and welcome to FinTech Futures. This is our Sibos series. My name is Tyler Paith. I'm a reporter for FinTech Futures, and here I'm very happy to be joined by Gary O'Brien of BNP Paribas. So before we get going, Gary, if you could give our audience a little bit of information about who you are and what your position is at BNP Paribas, please.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Gary O'Brien. My role is Global Head of Bank and Broker Segment Strategy. That really means that I look after how we're looking to evolve our solutions in custody, clearing, things like that. I've been with BNP Paribas for around 19 years across different markets, different regions, and very much looking forward to Sibos this year.
Yeah, so it's very exciting. It's a highlight of my calendar too. Yeah. And I never miss it. Unfortunately, we were unable to go this year. I understand that you've been there quite a few times before. In terms of your own attendance and BNP Paribas attendance, what are you most looking forward to this year's event in Beijing, and what can we expect to see there?
Yeah, I think this year there's obviously going to be a wide range of organisations there, international names, local names from China as well. And I think we're seeing that it's a continuation of a lot of the themes that we've talked about in the past, things like digital technology, around the role that SWIFT can play in the new market and infrastructure that we see around the world, how regulation is impacting markets, and having this happen in Asia where the regulatory landscape is very different from what we see in Europe should give us a very different feel to how those discussions go. So I'm very interested in that. And of course, Sibos is a great place to be meeting clients and providers and different parties that could be interesting into the future. So for myself, when I go to Sibos, I do like to see organisations that I don't know so well as well, because when I'm looking at how we should evolve things into the future, that dynamic between agent banks and fintechs is really shifting. So Sibos is a good place usually to be able to see what people are doing in that space.
I definitely agree with that. It's a really good and colourful mix of financial institutions. You've got the big players, the smaller players, all in one room, able to converse and collaborate together, which is really exciting. As we look ahead, and given your own standing at BNP Paribas, you've been there for 19 years now, that you say. In terms of these securities markets, what do you think the greatest challenges are for ensuring good accessibility to those markets, especially for maybe smaller financial institutions or emerging markets?
Sure. I think, again, there's a lot of change going on around the world at the moment, and at some points it feels like the speed of change, the amount of change is just growing almost month by month. And the problem for small organisations is at the same time they are seeing more interest in a wider range of securities, whether it's different asset classes, whether it's different markets that they want to get access to securities from. Their clientele are changing their focuses as well. So the challenge is really evolving the breadth of what you want to bring to your clients. And the additional challenge that is brought on by the difference in the nuances of regulatory change across those markets. Again, as I said, I think holding this year's Sibos in Asia is something that will probably help us to see that more obviously, because of the regulatory diverse nature of the individual markets around the region, when you compare that with Europe and obviously the US. Understandably, the one that comes to everyone's mind at the moment is T+1, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. But what is the key challenge to the securities market related to all of this is it still remains about automation. We need to be at a point in time where we see that the vast majority of activity is end-to-end automated and very much focused on exception handling. And so Sibos is a good place, and SWIFT are a good organisation that help to ensure that the highest levels of automation possible for the marketplace.
That's a really interesting answer, and I like what you're saying about, you know, the opportunities of the Asian markets in this respect. Because last year it was in Toronto in Canada, and now it's moving over to Beijing, which is almost like a completely different side of the coin. And I think it's an important place for the financial industry to meet and to be this year, to see what we can learn and take away from the event in China this year. You did mention T+1, dare I say T+0 as well. Everything's getting faster. We've got real-time settlement coming in. In terms of, you know, facilitating that demand for faster settlement, what would be the main challenges for banks and brokers like BNP Paribas?
Sure. As we say, T+1 is obviously one of the key focus points for the world. I think it shouldn't go unnoticed that whilst we're all talking about T+1, Sibos is happening in China, which is already on T+0. Yeah. So it's obvious that we can see that faster settlement, more efficient settlement is achievable. The point there really is that obviously the Chinese market operates in a very different way to international markets. So there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had about what really is the right model as things move forward. As we sit here today, obviously the US has moved to T+1, and there's a lot of good feeling about how that's happened. The reality when you lift under the hood is that you can see that a lot of the success of where we stand with T+1 in the US today has been built around increased operational support rather than technical evolution. Some people have implemented new technologies, and a lot of the fintechs have supported that, but a lot of it has been around putting more people on the process, and that can work in the forum of the US market for T+1. When we look at, as we sit here today, again, we're in the process of having the UK report on accelerated settlement released in the coming days, and again, I think we'll see that it's very clear what worked for the US doesn't necessarily work in Europe. So we have to make sure that, number one, we're doing things in the right way for the regulatory framework and the technical framework of the markets that are impacted. And number two, that we know why we're doing it. And this is a conversation we're having at the moment about in the US, there was a very real situation that occurred, and the decision was taken that T+1 could help to reduce the cost and the risk in the market. We need to make sure that in Europe, are we going into T+1 for the same reasons, or are we going into Europe for different reasons? And I think that needs to be part of what we talk about in these market papers at the moment, because that reason should determine how you solve it. And that reason will determine what technologies are the right technologies to solve the solution. To your point, are we going to T+1 as a stepping stone towards T+0, or are we going to T+1 because we think T+1 is the right market? Because same thing again, if we were going to T+0 from T+1, maybe we should be implementing solutions that allow us to get to T+0 as part of the T+1 implementation, rather than effectively running two projects almost back to back. So there is a lot of conversation out there still for me to be had around these points, and that's why I don't feel that in the UK and in Europe we be in the right approach to be looking to implement in the next 6 months. I do think that a longer time frame to implement makes more sense, so that the market as a whole, again, as you say, the banks and the fintechs can work together to create the best landscape in the end for the benefit of our clients.
That's really an interesting answer in this sort of like ascent and pursuit of T+0, right? It's like, do you run the two projects in parallel? Do you run one with the hope that it will lead on to the other? I think it is going to be quite an interesting challenge for the securities markets to overcome, and I'm sure that BNP Paribas will be leading that charge. As we look ahead, maybe towards 2030 and onwards, shall we say, to put a time frame on it, how do you think the challenges and key trends in the industry will evolve?
Sure.
And how do you think that BNP Paribas will be placing itself at the centre of that evolution?
Sure. So if I start on the first part of the question, I think, again, T+1, T+0, digital securities and what they do for settlement cycles will continue to be a very central point of the conversation. And again, coming back to the technical side of it, if we go back over time, we moved from obviously the most recent change, T+3 to T+2, and going through that change, what we did was we moved from effectively a model where you had operational people almost reviewing every single transaction to ensure that we were comfortable that it was acting as it should. By moving into T+2, we moved to much more of an exception-based processing. So technology played a massive part in that, of being able to say, right, 90% of the transactions flowing through the system are well formatted, they've matched in the market, they've settled, we don't need to look at them. What we need to do is look at the 10% that have issues or concerns that need to be addressed. So we moved to exception-based processing. Moving now from T+2 to T+1, to my mind, where we need to focus is on reducing the number of exceptions. So that's where technology is going to play a massive part, and again, fintechs play a massive part in helping organizations to effectively resolve in real time and in an automated way obvious exceptions where the solution is very clear. And so you see a lot of organizations around the market who are helping to create automated kind of query resolution tools, SSI correction solutions and so on. And that will then allow organizations to focus on the really more the complex exceptions that do need people to address them. And then I think if we then look at T+1 to T+0, we effectively, all of what I've talked about there is really focusing on resolution after the fact. Moving to T+0, we need to make sure as we get to that you have the right answer before you go into the settlement flow. So everything effectively needs to move to almost pre-trade or pre-settlement to resolve those issues. So that, again, the technology piece over this period is going to be massively important. At the heart of that technology piece is data. So data is the new asset class. It's at the heart of everything that we do. It is what tells us what is right and what is wrong. And it's what helps everybody from investors to intermediaries really pinpoint where challenges can be and look to focus on resolving those. So a big part that organizations like ourselves need to do is make sure that our data is more easily accessible, probably much more centralized as well, and focus then on the extracting what I essentially term the information out of that data that is usable and valuable, again, to ourselves and to the parties that we act for. So I think that, again, in the next couple of years, that's where a lot of focus will be, to then overlay the right APIs, the right artificial intelligence, and so on, over that, and to extract the information that people need to use to start decision-making processes from a much more advanced space than we do today. Alongside that, that's a technology angle. Alongside that, we're not going to escape. Regulation is going to continue to evolve, and it should continue to evolve to make sure that the interests of investors and issuers and the parties in the chain are all well represented. It's important for organisations like ourselves to be part of those conversations because often we're closer to the interested parties than some of the central bodies are. And again, because we are globally present, we're a local agent in 27 markets around the world. We give our clients access to over 90 markets around the world. We know what is happening in other markets, so we can help to pick and choose almost the the right bits and pieces that can be implemented in a particular market, or we can help to flag some of the challenges that we've seen when something specific has been implemented in a particular market. The final thing I would mention, and coming back to it, is digital assets tokenization. So again, we're seeing a lot, particularly in the UK at the moment, around the digital task force and the digital sandbox being launched. Obviously, there's a digital sandbox in Europe already. We're seeing a lot of organizations that have gone through tokenization proof of concepts. We feel that we're now moving from the phase of proof of concept into production, and production-like solutions on a limited scale, as it were. Why is that important? It's important because to date, a lot of the tokenization projects have focused on the issuance side, and they've proven the value that tokenization can bring for issuance of particular securities. There's a lot of theory and different views about the value of that the digital infrastructure, the DLT, blockchain, smart contracts, etc., and what they can provide in the settlement side of it. But that hasn't been tested to the same degree yet. So for that infrastructure, for that marketplace to become mainstream, you need to create a secondary market, and to create the secondary market, you need to create the settlement flow and the securities side of the market. So it's going to be very interesting to see over the next few years how that comes to fruition. We risk at the moment creating very bespoke and unharmonized, if that's a word, infrastructure on the back of these issuance projects. And the whole concept is about creating efficiency and creating harmonization across markets. So what we do need to see, and I think where regulation will play a part, but also where those of us in the market will play a part, is how do those different issuances, those different values that the issuers see, come into a more harmonized framework that can make it easier for investors to get access to them into the future. That to me is a journey from today out to 2030.
That's a really, really good answer. And we are having this conversation maybe before Sibos actually kicks off. But in my opinion, I do see tokenization, like it was last year, being a really, really key topic during these conversations this year. I like what you're saying about the need for players to collaborate on this in the trading market between the banks, the fintechs, the different kind of vendors who can layer additional managed services on top. And that's exactly why we have events like Sibos, isn't it, to bring all these people together. It's been really, really fantastic to talk to you about T+1 and T+0, Gary. And I could talk to you all day, but unfortunately we've got to let you go to another event now. But thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you to everybody who's followed this conversation online. If you'd like to find out more about Sibos 2024 and follow our coverage on the week, then please head on over to fintechfutures.com. My name has been Tyler Pave, and thank you. Goodbye.